Daniel chapter number 1, verses 8 through 16. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us posts to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them posts. Daniel and his friends were showing incredible wisdom at such an early age. They were following the scriptures, and they believed the scriptures. And we're going to show you in Deuteronomy where God actually was making fun of the children of Israel for eating meats to their false gods. And he basically said, where are your false god now? It's going to get you out of trouble. So Daniel and his friends knew from the scriptures not to defile themselves by eating and drinking meats offered to other gods. You see, that is the main thing. The question is not, could Daniel or did Daniel have a permission to eat meat or drink wine? That's not the point. The point of the matter was eating and drinking meats offered to devils. And Daniel and his friends were not intimidated, even though young men brought to a foreign country hundreds of miles, most likely never will see their homes again. And they didn't. Most likely never will see any other of their families again. Anyone else would have just assimilated into whatever culture and really would have counted themselves fortunate to say, we are blessed to be able to eat what comes from the king's table. But Daniel and his friends still believed in their God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to not defile themselves. And God blessed them. You see, Daniel was a wise young man. He said, okay, let's give it a test. You know how Elisha did on Mount Carmel? The God that answered by fire. He is God. Daniel said, okay, give God 10 days. And if our countenance do not look better, then you do what you want to do. But they were so sure that God would answer them that they were willing to put God to a public test to show. And God did. Now, this principle that we see exhibited by these young men is key. It's going to be a major end time principle that's going to appear over and over. The children of Israel wrestled with this over and over so many times. In the commandments, God told his Torah, his statutes, his ordinance, he told them not to be like the gods or not to be like the nations in whom I am sending you. Don't let them change you from worshiping me. Don't let them do that, because if you start bowing down and serving other gods, then you will incur my anger and lose my favor. We find this will be a major thing that will happen in the end time. So let's take a look at our scriptures. And right here, this is Deuteronomy that we just stated to you, 32 and 38. You can read this, and this is a scripture where God actually talked about them for eating sacrifices to their false god and drinking their wine. So this is more than likely one of the scriptures that Daniel and his friends held on to. And they said we would not get defiled with the king's meat. Now, the Apostle Paul over here in Corinthians dealt heavily. Actually, he talked about it in Romans 14th chapter, verses 15 to 17, 1 Corinthians 8th chapter, 7 through 10, and then he talked about it over here, 1 Corinthians 10, 18 through 21, then 1 Corinthians 10, 28 through 31. And he dealt with this subject, and he just summed it up in verse number 20, 18 through 21. Look, the problem is not meat. The problem is the meat being offered to devils. We can assimilate with devils. And you would think that would have settled the matter. But no, it did not settle the matter. We can find Christ, the resurrected Christ, dealt with this matter again. He dealt with the church in Pergama in Revelations. He dealt with the church in Thyatira in Revelations. We can see here, he told them he had somewhat against them because they took heed to the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel to eat things sacrificed unto idols and to commit fornication. The story of Balaam and Balak. Balak was trying to hire Balaam to curse the children of Israel so he can defeat them. At first, he wouldn't go under the directions of the Lord. But then he eventually went. And God's anger was aroused at him. And he sent an angel to smote him or to kill him. And the angel was about to kill him, but his donkey, she saw him, and 3 times she diverted the angel. But 3 times Balaam's anger was increasingly hot against this animal, until the point when the donkey had nowhere to go, and the donkey just fell backwards to keep from going forward. And Balaam was whipping a donkey. And that's when the angel appeared and says, I surely would have killed you and let the donkey live. You'd think after all of this, Balaam would have learned his lesson. But no. Since he couldn't curse him directly, he devised a demonic plot where he had women to have them to come in and eat things sacrificed to idol. And then they had a fornication and adulterous relations with these women and caused God's anger, and they bowed down and worshiped them. This is the spirit that God said that the church still had. This same spirit of wanting to be like everyone else, of wanting to assimilate, of wanting to be like the crowd. The scripture says, follow not a multitude to do evil. This is the same thing Antichrist is going to use in the end time. This same weapon of assimilation, where God's people unwittingly are going to want to be with the crowd, be with the multitude. Everyone's doing it, but that does not make it right. What does God's word teaches us? That's what's make something right. And that's a major end time event that will face God's people once again. God, we bless you and give you all the glory and honor. Help us to stand and be strong.